Is it time that Kyler Murray fully takes leadership of the Arizona Cardinals, both on and off the field? That's what we're talking about.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cardinals, Alex Clancy here, still on location. I'll be home tomorrow, I promise. You got a weird background. Just, you can deal with it for another 25 minutes. Follow me on Twitter, Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Please like, subscribe the YouTube channel as well. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day, free and available on all platforms. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. So we've got a lot to discuss. While we are slowly inching toward list season, we're not there yet. We've got about 6 weeks. We've got the June 1 cut date. So there are things to discuss as we inch closer and closer to that. We're not so far removed from the NFL draft that we can't just bask in the sunlight of what Monty Ossenfort provided for the Arizona Cardinals. But there are some interesting things that need to be discussed. And I'm going to bring on a friend of the show here in a minute to discuss them. But one of the things that I don't discuss enough is, why isn't Kyler Murray the leader of this team? Why isn't Kyler Murray the bona fide, no doubt about it, college football holding the flag, running out of the tunnel leader of this team? And it's kind of been Budda Baker. It's kind of been nobody. Kliff Kingsbury definitely wasn't taking that role, where other organizations, like I guess you could say Tennessee, Mike Vrabel, he's kind of the leader of that organization. Is it time for Kyler Murray really to take that step forward? And would that kind of placate the naysayers pertaining to him being a leader? My thing is, whenever I can bring somebody smarter in to talk, I do that, so you don't have to hear me talk as much. Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus, joins me at PFF_Brad on Twitter. Brad is the Monty Ossenfort, I think he's the director of the fan club of Monty Ossenfort. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I do want to dive into this right away. Kyler Murray, national optics. Great player at times, has some not so great moments. Kind of a weird dude as pertaining to just a traditional quarterback from the leadership and, stature standpoint. Do you think that Kyler Murray has what it takes to really just turn the page and become a true bona fide leader, like, I guess, dictionary definition quarterbacks are in that regard?
Yeah, I would certainly hope so. Look, I mean, just from a standpoint of, he's still like a 25-year-old kid. Like I say kid, I feel so old saying that. I'm not even 30 yet. But like, I think we forgot. I hope he can mature and we can give him that space, because I was an idiot when I was 23, 24 years old as well. But even beyond that, like, look, we've known he was one of the best players in all of football his entire life. I almost think, to a degree, having Kliff Kingsbury be his first NFL coach, like, sure, it was good in some ways, probably also a bad thing, because it continued, a guy that admitted he recruited him heavily and sought after Kyler Murray from he was 17 years old, and already was kind of lauding this player. So it also maybe gave him some leeway to kind of not really grow and be, super duper committed to getting better and better each day. Because again, when you're an awesome athlete, as he was, when you're a special talent, he obviously does still work very hard. He got his extension for a reason, was awesome in the first half of 2021. Everyone kind of wants to forget that, I guess, now, because he plays a lot of Call of Duty or whatever. But yeah, like, I think when you get back to football, when you're committed, a guy like Jonathan Gannon, who I think, like, yeah, he gets made fun of. He's a football nerd. Like, he's obsessed with football and improving every single day. I think he can. I think that people need to have patience with Kyler Murray. And if he can become that guy that can kind of get everyone in line and get everyone, focused on the ultimate goal, he can be an all-around really good leader and player at quarterback for this team.
Yeah, and look, you know who else got made fun of before he became head coach? Mike McDaniel. And look at what he did with Miami. Like, it doesn't matter what your head coach looks like. Yeah, he's got some weird mannerisms. So does every human being on the planet. Who gives a rip about that? And what you say about Kyler, like, all 22-year-olds, 25-year-olds play video games now. 50-year-olds play video games. They're getting divorced because of video games. Okay, you'd much rather have him. And as he's got some cheese in a video game production company. Like, is he not allowed to have, hobbies? Do you want him out at 3 o'clock in the morning at clubs? Like, I know that that's a tired way to, look at the spectrum here, but there are a couple of things you said. First of all, I think Kyler Murray won in spite of Kliff Kingsbury, not because of him. I don't know why that's not like streamlined thought process, but he is not a finished product whatsoever. You look at Josh Allen, what happened after Brian Daboll left, he turned into turnover happy Josh Allen. And sure, I'm not comparing them directly, but you need a good ecosystem and cocoon around you to be able to thrive in this league. And with that, we've seen him more on social media, which is little, but he's kind of breaking out of his shell. That way he's kind of becoming a human in that regard. Like, what do you think Kyler Murray needs to work on most to be able to become the great leader on and off the field, at least from a national perspective, from what you see in your lens?
Looking at the national lens, one thing too, like, not to make excuses for the guy, of course, he can rise above things and be an individual and be a leader, but a guy, Alex Smith, 34 years old, goes to the Washington Commanders and is talking about how hard it is to have everyone stay focused on football when the GM's doing things, the ownership group's doing things. There's all these things going on. And in Arizona, you have Steve Keim having issues off the field. You have a coach get fired midseason, ownership getting sued by a former personnel director, getting one of the worst grades in the NFLPA report card. Like, Kyler can rise above that, but let's not act like that the ecosystem he was in was not impacting his ability to kind of push through that. So, yeah, I think what he can do, look, the clause in his contract tied to studying more film was not in there by accident, or it's no longer in there, but, was not asked for by accident. I think he can be all the cliches, a first guy in, last guy out guy, be a film junkie. I think it helps to bring a guy like Hollywood Brown in that maybe, he's so close with, they can do it together. You can get the offense galvanized, get the new coaching staff involved as well. I think that's the big thing. But like the story is not written. There's plenty of time for him to grow in that area as well.
So I'm so happy you ended it with that. Is there that much time? Like, when you look at what's coming in 2024, and I stop it. All of you, I'm not having the conversation, because first of all, I think he's going to be the Cardinals head quarterback in perpetuity. But like, if say he plays 10 games and it doesn't go so well and the Cardinals get the number 1 overall pick, like, very uncomfortable conversations are going to need to be had through the process, because when it comes down to it, and I don't know why this is the case, Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus, just because a player's not the GM's guy immediately, eradicates any sort of cohesion between the two, which is ridiculous. But if this season doesn't go well, good, this is good. Do you see a world where they try to move off from Kyler Murray to draft Caleb Williams if they have the number 1 overall pick?
So I agree. It's silly in principle, and it's not tied to winning and things like that. It's more tied to, if you're Monty Osfort and Jonathan Gannon and you move on from Murray next offseason, draft a new quarterback, you're basically in year 1. So you're extending your career lifespan as a GM, as a head coach, and more we see across the NFL. Those are often one shot, and especially a GM. Like, we haven't had a GM hired a second time in a while. They're not even getting interviews anymore. So that, I think, is a unfortunate reality of the situation, which is not tied to, like you said, actually building a roster and winning football games. Look, I do. If they're picking first overall and he plays 10 games, I think it is very possible, given how good Caleb Williams is, that they do make that decision. If they pick first overall because Kyler, let's say, only plays 6 games because of injury, well, is the injury healthy enough, or what's going on there? Anyway, I think it is a reality. It's scary because as good as these prospects are supposed to be, the unknown is always a whole lot scarier than the known at quarterback in the NFL. Murray has shown us some good tape, but yeah, it's got to be a possibility.
I'm just going to do a live stream of my life if we start having that conversation. I'm just going to live stream my podcast, not even do 25 minutes, and just field questions from everybody. It's going to be, holy shit, I really hope that doesn't happen. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus, joining me. We're going to dive deep into the draft, one that he praised Monty Ossenfort for more than... So I've had a couple people on talking about the draft, and Brad Spielberger's like that one, the one seed just above everybody else, where he was just praising what Monty Ossenfort did. We're going to dive deeper into that next. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by BetterHelp. Okay? BetterHelp is a vessel you can use to explore yourself talk about things, and get on your path to become the better you. All right. It's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you and never take a moment to think about what you need for yourself. But when we spend all our time giving, it can leave us feeling stretched thin and burned out. And therapy can give you the tools to find more balance in your life so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suitable for your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists at anytime for no additional charge. It's so easy. Do it from the comfort of your home, man. Turn the camera off, turn the camera on. Do it over the phone. Doesn't matter. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Yeah, I refuse to have the Kyler Murray. Because here's the thing. Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus, at PFFbrad.com, at PFF_Brad, sorry. While the Cardinals have, and we'll talk about this, and I'm sure this is going to be the crown jewel of what you're going to discuss, that having two bites of the apple, the top five. I had you on before the draft. We talked about this before, and getting bites of the apple for the Caleb Williams, Drake May sweepstakes could be an unprecedented tool to have. I mean, Caleb Williams could go for 3 first-round picks, 2 seconds, and a player. Like, we're not going to see a draft package in the past that will that will match up, and you can go into more detail about this. What we're going to see for Caleb Williams, it seems, if a team chooses to trade out. So the Kyler Murray or Caleb Williams thing, stop it on ice next to your Coors Lights. Chill the hell out. We've got about 6 or 8 months or 10 months before discussing that. But pivoting to the draft, everybody was nervous in the Valley. Is this Steve Keim part 2? They didn't do anything in free agency, blah, 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 blah. The tampering story comes out. Here we go again. And then the lights go on. What were your thoughts? Cardinals on at 3. The pick is in. It still said Cardinals. They hadn't changed the moniker on the thing. Like, what are we doing here? And then everything changed. Walk me through your next 20 minutes or 30 minutes of thought processes as it pertains to the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah. So the big thing is, look, you can, of course, eventually analyze the results of the draft. That's how this league works. You're going to impact the win or loss column by the players themselves, how they develop. But the process is the real thing we can actually look at during the draft itself. And you can have a sound process and control that more as a general manager than you can how players develop, which may be tied to coaching, maybe tied to other things. So from a process standpoint, I think Austin Fort may have had the best first draft I've ever seen. I mean, like, that's a hyperbolic statement, but I really don't know if it is. So first and foremost, you trade down from 3 for, look, I like Will Anderson a lot, but no one in the draft space had him in the same regard as a Nick Bosa or a Chase Young or that tier of prospect coming out. You get a first-round pick, not from, let's say Philly comes up and does it. Okay, cool. We have next year's 28th overall pick. No, right. You get the Houston Texans first overall pick, which very well can be top 5 and a third rounder. I think it's one of the best trades I've ever seen, frankly, in the draft. So, again, process, all that, yada, yada, yada. The player they take next year, if he stinks, no one's going to look back on it in that regard. But I think it is just a slam dunk way to start your regime. And then you take the extra ammo and still go get your guy that you may have taken at 3 regardless at 6 in Paris Johnson. I think it was a masterful beginning to the Monty Austin Fort era.
Yeah. And now with Paris Johnson specifically, good dude, wanted to play with Kyler Murray. They dapped it up afterwards. Like, I had Jay Stevens from Locked On Buckeyes on last week, and he just gushed about this young man. I mean, he's large. He's a big guy. Where is he going to play? It doesn't matter. Like, this was me harking back to the Cardinals passing on Tyler Linderbaum last year because they had Rodney Hudson to trade for Hollywood Brown. Now the Cardinals would have had their center for the next 12 years, and now they could have their left tackle, regardless of where he plays this year, whether it be right tackle, left guard. The Cardinals have needs everywhere. The Paris Johnson pick, would he have been a top 3 or 4 pick if the quarterbacks didn't front load this draft? Like, is he that good?
I don't know. So I like Paris Johnson a lot. I do. But I'll tell you, across the league, this tackle class was not viewed in particularly high regard. Like, I think him going in the top 10 would have happened regardless. But, I'll say this. I think right out of the gate, he's going to be a phenomenal run blocker for this team. Like you said, we'll see where he plays right guard or right tackle, maybe even at left tackle. early on in the first year, I think you are going to see him lose to power rushing. Bull rushes, speed to power guys are going to give him trouble. He needs to improve his anchor a little bit. And I think that, like, when you draft a guy super, super high, it's usually because they're a good pass protector right out of the gate. But I think he has all the athletic ability in the world to get there. Like you said, he may have been the draft's favorite person, right? Like, super smart kid, loves football, will play anywhere, will do anything you say. So, yeah, not holding anything against him, but, like, is he a Penei Sewell level prospect? No, but he's a really, really good football player and should be right away.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part. The Cardinals don't need that. They need bodies who can play. Yeah. And that's the main thing. And, them trading up to 6 was kind of looked at as, oh, they could have got him at 12. No, they couldn't have.
No.
So they couldn't have. So let's just, snap that. Now we go to the second round. So the Cardinals have now, picked up a pick next year. They're moving and shaking. They got their guy. They still kept the first round pick. If they didn't draft another player the rest of the draft, it would have been a win. Like, it doesn't matter. They got their extra bite at the apple, their extra raffle ticket for next season. And then at 34, because they didn't have to give up any of their capital for this year, all they gave up was 12 and 33 that they just accumulated, they just acquired. Will Levis drops like a little Christmas present early. Tennessee's close enough. Cardinals Tennessee moves up to 41, moves up to 34 from 41, gives Cardinals 41 and the 72nd pick, I think, which supplanted pretty much the pick that they had to swap with Philly with the tampering. And who falls in their lap? The apple of my eye in the second round at 34, even though I knew it was a little bit of a reach. In BJ Ojulari, I had Caroline Fenton of Locked On LSU on last week. She talked 10 minutes about this dude. I couldn't get a word in. And I was like, this is the greatest interview I've ever done. Because I didn't have to ask any questions. I learned about, do you know about number 18 at LSU? Why people wear 18? I had no idea about that. I'm from the West Coast, man. And he's wearing 18 as a rookie with the Arizona Cardinals. This dude seems to be like a Paris Johnson type where he's not tip-top everything, but the dude shows up, he's a good kid, and he can do a little bit of everything really well. Is that accurate?
10%. 110%. And the big thing, too, is people pointed to his testing. He was injured. He had a hamstring injury during his testing. His numbers and his RAS score and all that is irrelevant because he was not healthy when he did it. Go watch his film and tell me he's not a good athlete, and I'll ask what film you're watching. So, look, again, like, do I think he was a first-round talent? No. But like you said, a very good player. I think a really good stand-up outside linebacker that Jonathan Gannon's going to love to use. His pursuit plays, he does not quit on any given snap. He runs after quarterbacks, after running backs, just with reckless abandon. Love the pick as well, again after a trade down. And just have to mention this because my favorite nugget of all time right now, using Las Vegas odds, and we agree, hopefully the Cardinals are not picking first overall, but they currently have number 1, 2, 33, 65, 68, 64. No, 1, 2, 33, 65, 66, 68 projected for next year. And you still get 2 awesome players in the first 2 rounds anyway.
I mean, can we just sim this season? I mean, can we just Madden this season really quickly? Let's hit these next 2 on the other side because I do want to talk about Garrett Williams and Michael Wilson. You had some interesting thoughts on Twitter about both of these gentlemen. Maybe not super top tier household names, but that does not mean these guys can't be starters week 1, especially with the roster as currently constructed, even though both of whom came off injuries in 2022. We'll roll that on. I do want to ask about DeAndre Hopkins. I'm going to put his over the cap hat on. Brad Spielberger, as it pertains to the Cardinals, have the option of cutting DeAndre Hopkins post June 1st if it makes sense to save $10 million against the cap. All that as we wrap up this Tuesday edition of Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus, contributor to overthecap.com. Just a machine over there. And I told you, you've supplanted Trevor Sikkema as my favorite Pro Football Focus guest. And I texted him, I told him that. I don't care. Like, I'm here, and I'm telling the truth here on Locked On Cardinals. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Please go like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn notifications on. Want to hit 3K before the 2023 season. I am here for you, with you, and by you. Please DM me on Twitter. Let's have this open flow of communication. Do not ask me about Kyler Murray or Caleb Williams yet. I'm putting a moratorium on that. So, 3rd round pick for the Arizona Cardinals. Christian Gonzalez was dropping. And for those that know who Brad said, Christian Gonzalez, I think, was your favorite player in the draft, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he dropped to 14, 15, 16. My spidey sense is like, can the Cardinals move back into the first to draft Christian Gonzalez? They didn't, obviously. In the third round, they get an absolute stud who was injured I think he got injured in October and November of 2022, corner Garrett Williams out of Syracuse. Give me a 30-second rundown of this dude, and if he could be a starter week 1 when he's healthy.
Healthy, yes. The rundown is if he doesn't tear his ACL in October, he is going as a top 40 pick in this draft. I mean, I know it was a super deep cornerback class, one of the best I think we've had in a long time, but a big physical outside corner, great mirroring, great athlete. I think you want to play him in zone, but he probably could play up in press if they wanted him to. But yeah, just very fluid, very good athlete, good use of his hands, but not too grabby and getting a lot of penalties. He's a stud. And I love the aspect here too of if you can't play right away, you're not really trying to win in week 1 anyway, necessarily. So it's a smart long-term pick.
It's the sneaky tank is what my buddy coined it. The sneaky tank, the passive tank. Yeah, so and you know what? The Cardinals need dogs on this team. And I think they drafted 3 of them in the first 3 picks. And that's something, he's going to be wearing 21, Patrick Peterson's old number. Like, it just makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Petty Patrick Peterson, we happily called him on this podcast, requesting a trade, coming back, popping for PEDs, then wanting more money. Patrick Peterson at his finest. He's going to be wearing number 21, and the dude loves to hit. And that's something we haven't seen from a CB1 really in the last 10, 12 years. I know Antonio Cromartie did a little bit, but he was a CB2. And then we have the corner out of or the wide receiver. Why is his name escaping me? The wide receiver out of
Michael Wilson.
Yeah, Michael Wilson. Sweet. Jeez. Yeah, Michael Wilson. So 6'1", plays outside, can play inside a bit. Tell me about this guy. Another top household name comes from the Pac-12, where everybody on the East Coast is sleeping when these guys are playing.
I think he's a guy where it's a high floor pick, right? And look, we're almost at pick 100, so that makes sense. But like you said, a taller guy in a class of a lot of short kind of slot type receivers or just Z's, not true X's. I think he has the ability to potentially be a true X receiver. Look, I'm not going to count him to DeAndre Hopkins, but you see last year when that role goes out of the offense, I'm now blanking on the his replacement last year, who was kind of just like a body at X when DeAndre Hopkins was injured. But nevertheless, like, he can come in and be that contested catch, like big body receiver. He can box out. He can be a big target for Kyler Murray to trust down the field. Is a fluid route runner, can create some separation. Hopkins always gets knocked for not really doing that, but he just makes every catch, so it doesn't matter. He's crisp. He's sharp. He's a smooth, big body guy. Again, I don't think he's going to be a superstar, but it could be a really, really good, number 3 option in an offense.
Yeah, and the Cardinals desperately need that, because if you look at this, and this is a good transition here, if DeAndre Hopkins does come back, and you're looking at DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore, Greg Dortch, and Michael Wilson, like, you're looking at a wide receiver squad that when Kyler Murray comes back, 25 teams would rival in the NFL, barring anything. There are very few teams in the NFL that have true bona fide wide receiver ones. Having a wide receiver 1 and a wide receiver 1A, be wide receiver 2 heavy with the Cardinals, and then having I call them the Teslas. I call it like Greg Dortch, Hollywood Brown, and Rondale Moore. These guys are 0 to 60 in 2.6. So if you have bigger guys on the outside and you have these 3 guys just murdering the inside of a defense with Kyler Murray as the conductor, it could be a whole lot worse. So as we transition into this, Brad Spielberger, the Cardinals could save some money if they caught DeAndre Hopkins post-June 1. The Cardinals aren't going to get full freight for DeAndre Hopkins. That ship sailed a long time ago. The only other option is to wait until the trade deadline and maybe get a 3rd-round pick for him. But at that point, do you see it benefiting the Cardinals more to just get as much as you can for him, cut him, or try and extend him and make it work in the cap space where he remains an Arizona Cardinal for the next 3 seasons?
Yeah, so the interesting thing, too, is, I've always comped this to the Julio Jones trade. The Julio Jones trade also happened after June 1st because Atlanta wanted to wait for better cap treatment for the trade. Mm-hmm. So that also applies to trades. You can't designate a post-June trade. You have to just wait until after June 1st. So maybe that also could be what they're waiting on. They say, hey, you know what? The offers weren't good enough during the draft. We'll see if a team that's been talking to us strikes out during the draft. I know Baltimore obviously did not. They go ahead and get Zay Flowers, even though he's nothing like DeAndre Hopkins. But, Buffalo took a tight end, didn't get a receiver. Whatever other team maybe is in the conversation could circle back. So I still probably would take bad value. I know it stinks. It's not fun to do. But, even through the deadline, you're paying him $8-9 million to play with Colt McCoy or maybe my guy Clayton Tune, who I'm also fired up about. But yeah, it sucks. But I probably still just because the risk is he gets injured and then you're locked in for the full salary or something like that, or he's unhappy and it tarnishes the new regime's ability to create a new culture and a new foundation. Not that I think he's like a total curmudgeon, but it doesn't help to have an angry vet. So I would still probably try to move him. But I hear you too, though. Like, why not just zig when everyone else is zagging and say, no, you're going to stay. You're going to stay here. We traded for you. We gave you a new deal, and you're going to play out the life of that deal.
I mean, the target monster that he is when he's healthy, you're not going to get that everywhere else. And I know that Kliff Kingsbury did underutilize him at times too. His big year here, they undervalued him by probably 20%. I mean, his red zone target should have been doubled. Like all these things. My biggest stat was it was in 2020, Davante Adams had more red zone touchdowns or red zone receptions than DeAndre Hopkins had targets. And it's like, if Davante Adams can get open, so could DeAndre Hopkins, and they just didn't scheme for him. But yeah, like with me, and I'm not trying to like purposely be like, nope, let's do it this way because everybody else is looking this way. If you front load this, give him a signing bonus, do whatever it is, placate him for 2023. In 2024, with Kyler Murray healthy, in theory, and all those new young guys, this could revitalize DeAndre Hopkins' career. We saw it with Larry Fitzgerald. I'm not comparing the two. Just stop. I'm not. But Larry Fitzgerald never really relied on his speed after 2016 or 2015 when Bruce Arians moved him in the slot. Like DeAndre Hopkins can play anywhere. And that's why keeping him, I think, would be more beneficial. We're going way over. But I do have one more question about Budda Baker. Requested a trade, wanted money, requested a trade when he didn't get it. New regime doesn't look great. When the first still of Monty Alsafort was him shaking Budda Baker's hand. This is the culture that we want to build here. Everybody should be like Budda Baker. Is this a bargaining ploy and they're going to extend him? Or is this going to be like a nope, buck stops here. You don't call the shots in this new regime?
Yeah, maybe. I think the thing was they probably wanted to get through the draft and also just get through the early part of the offseason. It sounds like it goes back to February. He was looking for new money, like you said, and they're probably sitting there thinking, like, maybe we'll consider it. He is the building block, the foundation of this entire team. But let's not do that if we don't even know what we're going to look like and Kyler's health and all those things. I would guess that, like, when it gets around July, August, they either say, okay, you know what? Let's either move him right now or let's give him that extension, right? It's one or the other. I mean, no team ever wants to extend a guy with 2 years left, but you also trade for DeAndre Hopkins when he has 4 years left and give him or 3 years left and give him an extension. You mentioned Petty Pat Pete, who always complained about them taking care of outside players more than internal guys. If there's one internal guy that you probably have to take care of, it's a guy like a Budda Baker. So I don't think it's dead. I don't think the relationship is soured at all. I think it's more when you're a new GM saying, I'm not going to get strong-armed, even if he's the most important player in the building. I'm not going to have my first contract negotiation with a veteran be one where I get rolled over and strong-armed into an early extension. I'm going to be patient, let it play out, and deal with it once I'm through the draft and through all those things. I would still honestly guess that, maybe in July, August, cooler heads prevail and they figure something out.
I mean, and I haven't said this in a decade. In the general manager of the Arizona Cardinals, we trust after what we've seen so far this offseason. Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus, joining me. Thanks so much, man. Alex Clancy, Locked on Cardinals. I'll talk to you tomorrow.